Tales of Estolia by Sashina Kerfman. Volume 1. The Promise of Zacharias. Part 7. Catalyst of Change. Chapter 4. Contract.
It was only after Marsden Taylor Smythe was interfered with that I realized that at least one of the participants in the grand design was using his position and powers to undermine my design. With everything that was riding on our efforts, it was inconceivable that someone would use this time to strike out at me personally. All of the metrics available indicated that this iteration had come much further than any other iteration. The probability of success was high. And rather than work towards the common goal we all shared, it was clear that one of my peers could not stomach the thought of my success. I have a clear idea who it is and why, but cannot write down my suspicions. Every action was, with a sufficient amount of delving, visible to any other participant. If I accused without proof, I would be sanctioned and my powers stripped until I could do little more than observe. I would have to rely upon my own allies and fight more than one evil. Elora, progress report.
Once Melody left the room, the warmth in Reardon's face seeped away, leaving his expression cold and disdainful.
I have no idea, Cassandra Taylor Smythe, if I'm doing a grave disservice to my best friend or not. I can only hope you are not the cold mercenary bitch you are reputed to be.
Caris lifted her chin.
Money is power, Reardon Cormac. Power is merely a force that can be used in many ways. I am tied to the reins of power. Will your friend use the money for good or for evil?
You act as if he will have all your money.
The money reverts to my husband with the requirement that it be passed on to the child that I will have.
She quirked a brow at him.
It's written into the will that the DNA must be tested, and the child be the confirmed genetic offspring of myself and my husband.
He tapped the contract he had placed in front of her.
This is a prenuptial agreement. It states that...
She pushed it back to him, having taken in the salient points.
It's insufficient.
He looked offended.
How? I must warn you that you can expect no more from your husband.
No,
she said.
It must be written that if we dissolve the marriage, he will maintain control of my financial interests. And if he dies, then you, Reardon Cormac, you take over my financial interests. At least until my child is 30.
That's one-sided. I don't think it would stand up in court.
She shrugged her shoulders and said,
Then give control of my finances to the injured party. If he seeks a divorce, I am once again in control of my finances, and if I seek a divorce, he will have this control. Put in a clause that we must seek mediation prior to any divorce, to include your presence. Whatever will protect your friend.
He looked at the contract and tapped it several times.
I believe I could come up with something. I'll be right back.
10 minutes later, he presented her with the revised contract. She read it through and nodded.
I consider this exceedingly fair.
She signed it and then pushed it towards Reardon. She noticed the name for her husband-to-be was indeed Sebastiani Zakarian. She tried to picture him. Black hair, dark eyes, not running to fat, quiet and broody. His name was not a target on social media sites, because from all she read about him, he did not indulge in sexual liaisons with anyone of any gender. The doorbell rang and she stood slowly, wondering if it was Zeb or Sloane. Melody rushed into the room and pulled her out, dragging her to a large master bedroom. Within 10 minutes Caris was dressed in a medieval gown. Melody left her in the bedroom and Caris felt weak-kneed at the thought that she was supposed to marry a total stranger. She shuddered to think what would be happening to her if she did not have that option open to her. She would be safe only when Sloane lost the chance to control her. Reardon asked her,
Are you sure you want to do this?
I've never wanted anything more in my life than this,
she said truthfully.
Sloane is here.
She tensed, but there was no place she could run or hide. Reardon led her out the back door and towards a fern grotto she admired when she was house-sitting. She was not surprised to see Sloane or Brant Kinsey. Her attention brushed over them and fastened on the man who was doing exactly what she was doing, marrying a total stranger. Her eyes met his and she walked forward steadily, smiling into his beautiful warm brown eyes. He looked at her like she was precious. Melody was the one who was doing the officiating. As soon as she started the service, Sloane objected. Seb pulled her close. His arms around her, one hand splayed across her abdomen, as they faced off against the man who would do anything to possess her, and the money that possession would bring him. Two older gentlemen who were quietly observing from the background stepped forward and began to query Sloane, asking for details and substance to his claims of breach of promise. Finally, one of the two said,
I'm satisfied Sebastiani Zakarian and Chrysandra Taylor-Smythe have a sincere desire to wed and see no evidence of a breach in promise. The wedding can go forward.
This was the moment when Sloane would have to decide how much her wealth mattered to him. If she died before she married, he would inherit the entire sum. Sloane started to move forward, but before he moved more than a few feet, the second witness spoke.
I would like to take a moment prior to the nuptials to interject one additional fact.
Sloane shifted from one foot to the other like an uncertain rhinoceros preparing to charge. After a moment the old man continued.
I was with Marsden Taylor-Smythe multiple times over the final days of his life. I believe my testimony, should I enter it, could quite easily result in his entire will being overturned. But even if it stands, I should like to acquaint you with one final codicil he added to his will just prior to his death. He included the provision that if Chrysandra were to die prior to the bearing of a child, especially in suspicious circumstances, then her wishes were to be honored, and the entirety of the assets of her father are to go to the Galaxy Group.